Welcome to the DevLaunch podcast, bringing you insights from industry experts on how to grow the digital agency you love. In this episode, I sit down with Max Traylor, the consultant's consultant, to unpack the intricacies of pricing strategies and client relationships. Max shares his unique take on why digital agencies need to evolve beyond that tactical work to secure their spot as strategic partners. Whether you're struggling with the risk of being vendorified or you're curious about productizing your services, this conversation offers insights that can reshape how you approach your agency's growth. Well, hey, Max, it's wonderful to have you on the show today. Max, short for Maximus, right?
Maxwell. Yeah, I got the formal treatment.
Oh, okay. Okay. Not Maximus, yep. Maxwell. Okay.
No,
okay.
There was a Maximus in school, and I was always jealous because I was the Maxwell, and of course they had to read the full names when they were doing roll calls. Like, cut it out. That guy's way cooler.
Well, I mean, I get that. I would understand that. Maximus would be an incredible. I mean, Maxwell.
Well, maybe it was Maximilian. No, it was Maximilian or Maximus. I don't know. It was really cool. But yeah, Maxwell formal version. Welcome, Robert yes. Maxwell. If you want to get formal about it.
I love it. Well, it's wonderful to have you on the show. You are the consultant's consultant. You mind telling us about what that's about? I remember seeing a podcast episode where you had mentioned this is like what you talk about when you're at the golf course, like just to see if people are interested in learning more.
Yeah, obviously we're on a podcast, so I have to assume you're interested. But yeah, most of the time when people ask you what you do, especially on the golf course, they don't care, and you don't want someone talking your ear off. So I just say I'm the consultant's consultant, like a bullshitter's bullshitter, and it's enough for a laugh. And then walking down the fairway, if somebody's a consultant or they're interested, sure, we can have a conversation, but don't talk people's ear off. That's the point. Good. But yeah, I consult with consultants, generally ones that work at agencies. I came from agency world, marketing agency world, and I fell in love with the side of the business that sells knowledge and experience, and that's called consulting or strategy or advisory or planning. All that stuff played by a completely different set of rules, and people treated me like a big boy. Circa 23 years old. So I was happy to be treated like an adult when I was doing those things. And then at the same time, writing content or building websites or doing anything delivery related, I was treated like a child. And I was not invited to the big kid table. Which
I imagine that probably helps to inform even your approach on how you consult with the consultants that you work with too, right?
That's like, if you want to make an impact, most people are out there, they want to make an impact. That's why we get into this stuff. There's other ways to make a lot more money. So if you want to make an impact, it's really hard to make an impact when you don't have access to decision makers, when you can't get into the minds or sit at the table of the people that are responsible for the future of the business. And if you are perceived as a vendor, if you are perceived as somebody selling something, it's a conflict of interest. You can't be invited to that decision maker table because every 9 times out of 10, you're going to say, "Oh, I have an idea. Why don't we spend more money on marketing?" Great. Thanks, Max. See you never. So you have to be, as a marketer, if you want stronger relationships with your clients, you have to cease to be a marketer. And you have to first identify as a business owner or a strategist or an indispensable partner, as a mentor of mine, Steve Lashansky, would say. And you just so happen to be able to do, some marketing things or have a lot of experience in that area. But you have to be able to speak business, and you have to be able to understand and have full conversations about what they care about. And you may never say the word marketing. It may have nothing to do with you. And that is the difference between a consultant or a partner or a strategist and a vendor.
Well, and you told me about this. I know you didn't coin the term, but vendorification. Would you mind? I mean, you kind of essentially touched on it a little bit, but would you mind unpacking that a little bit more? Like, what exactly is this vendorification, and why is it something that you think digital agency owners need to be aware of?
Well, so when I started to do more strategy work, I was still young. I was 23, 24, running a small, like 10-person agency. Very early on in the relationship, when we were doing strategy, they would introduce me, the client would introduce me to the rest of their team. This is Max. He's helping us with our marketing strategy. And everyone sits up and goes, this young guy, he must know a lot of things. Later in the relationship, when we're designing websites, this is Max. So he's helping us build our website. He's the website guy. I was like, that's weird. And then we're writing content. Oh, this is Max. He's writing our LinkedIn posts. And so I would just be marginalized again and again based on what we were doing. So you're identified by what you say yes to, even the emails that you answer. And so being vendorified is something I wanted to talk about in my book, and I looked it up, and sure enough, it's in the Urban Dictionary, and it says when the client reduces the relationship to that of a vendor. In a relationship status, a vendor is far lower than that of a strategic partner. So to be vendorified is when you're no longer invited to the table. You're no longer, the CEO or the leadership team no longer attends your calls. You're generally, passed off to someone lower on the management team. But it is marginalizing your relationship, and you will no longer have influence or control over the decisions in that relationship. That's what being a vendor is. They are purchasing things from you.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, the way that you frame it, that sometimes it's a thing that happens gradually. So it's not even just like you've only ever been a vendor in their eyes. Like sometimes you come in as a strategic partner, and then as time goes on, like you said, the more you say yes to the specific things you're saying yes to, there can be this eventual progression towards now you are just a vendor. In your experience, just like not only from your own personal experience, but also just in consulting with different digital agencies, like what are some ways that you advise to kind of shore that up to keep from that eventual decline into just vendor status?
Yeah. So actually in David Baker's Business of Expertise, he talks about like 5 or 6 different areas, things like your job title. Does it say content writer? Does it say website developer? Or does it say strategic partner to my clients, or whatever it is? So your title, the titles of the people at your client organizations that you work with, the words next to the dollar signs. A lot of people will fancy their work as strategic, and they'll talk strategy. You go to the last page of the proposal with the dollar signs, and the word next to that is website or content or ad management or all of these commodity services that can be easily replaced. And then like the funniest story, when this was really implanted in my brain, I had a business partner while I'm running these low profit content website, all the traditional marketing services. My business partner is in the other room doing a $5,000 retainer, and he gets on the phone once a week with the leadership team for 15 minutes. And when he would get emails, he had a fake email alias. I forget the name of this fake person, but anytime he got an email about something tactical, when's this blog coming out? Why is the shade of purple on the website, weird? He would forward it to the fake email address, log into the fake email address, and say like, "Oh, I'm tagging in our specialist, to answer that question." So he knew that if he answered that question, then he's sort of inviting more of that behavior. Like, yeah, when you have a tactical problem, you email me. He knew that would be detrimental to the relationship. He knew they would no longer invite him to that table. So he had a completely separate personality, and that's what we need to think about. We need to think about our role as a strategic partner, and the separation of that role from other roles that are responsible for tactical things. And I think a mistake that people make is they try and combine those two things. One day on Monday, you're talking strategy. Then on Wednesday, you're talking tactics. That's slowly going to deteriorate your status as a strategic partner.
That is really, really fascinating. And I suppose like in your friend's example, maybe he had other employees or other contractors he was working with. But I suppose for like solopreneurs, like people who are somewhat more solo in their practice, or they don't have a very large team, the first thought that's probably coming to their mind is like, well, I don't have somebody I can pass it off to. But even the example you gave, like you could have another alias email address that it could be coming from, just to again give that appearance of distinction.
Look, Max, what do you think of this piece of content? Like, I'm pretty good at content, like I know that. But if I give them advice on content, then I'm the content guy. So what do I say? I go, look, I've been out of the content game for like 10 years, but I know a few people that I'm sure would be happy to review this. Do you want me to make an introduction?
So maybe if I can poke back, or maybe devil's advocate here, because I can almost hear the questions coming back from conversations I've already had with my clients, and what also with other prospects I speak with, is, number one, there's been lots of discussion about heading into a recession, or like, as we all know, 2023 was really hard, especially for digital agencies. And I think in times when work starts to slow down, we can feel this need to be able to point to more tactical value adds, right? Where like sometimes strategy or strategic work can feel like a nice to have, where tactical feels more like a must have. So like, what do you say back to somebody who is feeling that, like, I don't know that I can get out of tactics, because tactics feel a lot more secure and stable in a down economy than strategy?
Well, and people are out there buying tactics. So the thing about strategy that really hurts people is that you actually have to sell it. Most agencies that I meet have never sold anything in their lives. They have merely participated in a buying process.
Wow.
There is a market. There is a pool of people out there buying marketing tactics.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's easier to get in line and put your card in the air and go, I'll do it for cheaper, or we have a better culture or soda machine or whatever. You're bidding on these things. That's not selling.
Yeah.
And so unless you've gotten really good at developing genuine relationships, credibility in the marketplace, you're on podcasts next to, smart people. Unless you've been doing that for a long time, you find yourself in a down economy. Yeah, you basically have no choice but to go tactics first. And it's not impossible to go from tactical to strategic. It's just like 1,000 times harder. So especially when you don't have that confidence of like, here's a $10,000 check that I got for creating a plan. So if you haven't done it, it's really tough. But a way to get started is just to start selling that plan first. They may not say yes, but you'll get used to it. And as soon as you start talking about and describing the value of a plan and going, hey, that's a really important result that you want. Wouldn't you agree that like we should probably create a plan first, or do you just want to go for it and just sort of wing it? Go, yeah, I want to create a plan. And so rather than signing up for something that we have no idea like what we're going to do, why don't we just do a short engagement to do the plan? And that'll create a lot more clarity for the project. Because I'm just concerned if you sign up for $10,000 a month for 6 months, we create the plan, and all of a sudden you only need to pay me $5,000, and it's really not as much as we thought, or there's another vendor that would be better, and I can help you evaluate that vendor. The logic behind it is there, but we take that first marshmallow when we're afraid and hungry. The marshmallow test with the kids. Yeah, we're all just kids with marshmallows.
I might not be super familiar with that, but I'm visualizing.
No, the 2 marshmallows. You put the marshmallow in front of the kid, and you say, "Hey, if you wait, you can get a second marshmallow." And most of the kids take the marshmallow.
That's great, but I think that's a good call out. And even just think about the selling process. It's like most of the time, in the buyer's eyes, a shorter term, a lower risk engagement, i.e. a project-based engagement, is going to be an easier sell than, hey, why don't you sign on for 12 months at $5,000 a month, when you still don't really fully know if this is going to be the right value proposition. I mean, project can be really helpful.
And that's the recipe. Like we'll talk about my philosophy on simplifying your service offering, or productizing, if we want to use a big word for it. But it invites a complete loss of control in the client agency relationship. So you get these people that are signing on, these big long-term retainers. They do their specialty for like a month, and then the client's like, well, we got you for a year and we're paying you $10,000 a month. So now you're going to do X, Y, and Z that you have no experience in, and then you're going to have to go hire somebody, and make an investment you're never going to get that investment back. So it just sort of broadens the value proposition. It deteriorates your focus and your expertise. And if you're not getting paid for a plan, then that's going to happen. I think it's all related, but it starts with most agencies not truly marketing themselves and generating their own pipeline. This is very hard to do when you're responding to an RFP. The RFP says we want a website. You can't go, hey, I have an idea, because someone was an idiot and didn't think, like, why don't you create a plan first? That's not your fault, but you're not going to get the deal. Because someone's going, I have an RFP, I'm trying to buy a website. You can't say, well, would you like to buy a plan? No, take a hike. You're going to lose the deal. So if you're surviving off of RFPs, if you've done the inbound thing and you're getting people reaching out to you because they clicked the website evaluation thing on your website, you're not going to be able to talk strategy. You're not going to get a seat at that table. You're not going to talk to the CSO or the technology people or the ops folks. You're never going to get in that room. They don't care about the website. So it's all related.
Well, Max, you had said a couple things that really resonated with me, and I think one of the things that really stood out in what you had said with the sales aspect is, if we're being honest, most digital agencies haven't sold a day in their lives. But the problem is many of them perceive that they have, because they have all this, call it referral business, people coming to them because, they've got a friend who thinks they understand what you do. You do websites. It's like, well, no, I do SEO. People don't really know what SEO is. Or maybe somebody is like, oh, you develop apps. It's like, well, no, I'm a product experience designer, but okay, sure. Yeah, whatever. And then before you know it, you're doing like everything and anything. And again, you think to yourself, I know sales, but to your point, it's like, there's not necessarily like an outbound motion to what you're doing. You're not going towards people because you don't really even know who your ideal client is per se. I think that's an interesting take.
Well, if you're giving them what they're asking for, that's not sales. That's the service industry. That's being a waiter at a restaurant and them saying, I want it well done. And you going, yeah, perfect. That sounds great.
Right.
So Steve Lashansky, who's written a ton of great books, this is another thing that he talks about, but 89% of the time, the first thing they ask for is not the thing that is most important or most beneficial to their business. I want a website. Are you sure? What do you really want? Well, we're looking for more customers. What kind of more customers? What's that going to do? What's your exit plan? What are all these things? There's so many more important things that are behind the scenes. So if you don't dig that deep and get to the thing that's most important and say, here's why I think we should start there, and here's why I'm the right person to do that for you, that's selling. So I think at face value, if you're just giving them what they're asking for, you're missing the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes me wonder, what you even just said right there, in order to have those types of conversations, there is a true discovery call that's happening where you're asking questions to draw out kind of the root cause, or like the 5 whys, if you will, like just drill into okay, this is what you're asking for, but why? But why? But why?
Yes. Ask why.
Right. Exactly.
And if they're like, shut up, kid, just give me the website. Then you're like, okay, see ya.
Well, exactly.
But we don't, because nobody builds the pipeline. And so every opportunity is like, I need to close this. Yes, I will be I will deliver this. Sorry, client, please don't fire me. Mm-hmm. There's even a little drawing of my in the book where the client has a little dollar and it's like, jump, vendor, jump. Mm-hmm. That's really the way it feels. If you don't consistently build relationships with your ideal clients. And what I mean by a relationship is, like, have you ever had a conversation with the ideal client and you say, well, what is really important to you this quarter? And they go, well, the most important thing is we're installing new toilets. And you go, man, that is so cool. Can I introduce you to somebody that's an expert at, installing some new toilets? Like, you have to be willing to just be a person and be willing to bring value to these people and listen to what's important to them, maybe introduce them to some people, but admit that what they're focused on right now has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, that's right.
Those are the relationships that you need to build and reinforce what you do on LinkedIn, or invite them to events that you're doing, so that when they do decide that, in my case, productizing or whatever it is that I can do for them is a priority, then I'm the first person they call.
That's right. Yeah. And if we're honest, like, that's probably the majority of the people who you're gonna, statistically, that's the majority of the people you're going to encounter at first, is people who at some point will want to buy from you or could want to buy from you, but right now they're not in that space.
Yeah, that's the majority. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you touched on it already. You mentioned the word productizing your services. In the process of productizing services, like, what are the main steps that an agency should be taking to move away from custom service model to a more repeatable and scalable product?
Yeah, look, if you have a service menu, it ain't going to happen. Just go to your website, hover over services. If there's a menu, you're screwed. You're screwed. McDonald's did its thing because they had a cheeseburger. Like this, we do cheeseburgers. Then they took over the world. Now they got all sorts of stuff. But the services menu, just like a restaurant, it is you sacrifice control. What would you like today, client? And David Baker talks a lot about this. You have to bring every client in the same door. So there's two things going on in my life. One is the strategy argument, only let them in the strategy door, and two is the productize argument, in that your strategy work should follow the same process every time. And generally it doesn't. But yeah, if you're going to, like, by productizing, I just mean you talk about it the same, you sell it the same, and you deliver it the same. And if you're letting clients choose what door they enter, you can't do that. It is astronomically more complex. Another symptom is you've got different clients buying different services. This one client does SEO, this other client does SEO and PPC, this other client's doing all these other acronyms, whatever people are using today to describe basic marketing. But you have to have every client going through a singular services process. And if you do 5 things, then you put them in chronological order. And you say, we start with A, then we do B, then we do C, then we do D. That is the key to operational efficiency. But yes, it requires that you get out there and you find the certain types of clients that will get most value out of that singular services process.
Yeah. So when you say the menu, if you have a menu, you're already screwed. Are you saying that if you have multiple ways to address the same need, then you're screwed? Or are you saying, like, to have your productized services like menuatized, if you will? Are you saying that that's the issue?
The issue is a lack of control. So if you do 5 things, if you got 5 things on your menu, but you say every client that we work with is going to do this one first, then this, then this, then this, then you're fine. That's a singular services process. That's going to create consistency across all your clients. So I don't care if you have 5 practice areas. That's fine. But stop letting clients start with number 6 and then they'll go number 3 and then they'll go, I'll have a number 1. You can't set and meet expectations. You can't train people to improvise. That is almost impossible to train people to improvise because you need experience and confidence, and you're still going to screw it up a lot. And employees are terrified of screwing up. So you got to give them a singular services process, and it is the burden of the seller or the strategist, if you're being paid to create the plan, to ensure that the expectation, on the client side is that, yes, we're going to go with your recommendation because you are the expert. That's why we're paying you.
Yeah, and I think the idea of, like you said, not letting people choose their own adventure or choose their own kind of pathway. Do you let people just, oh, I'll start off with tactical and then eventually I'll get to strategy? It's like if you have like a flow that you want to take your clients through, and that always needs to start with that one project or that one kind of like strategy engagement. That's a really helpful perspective. And you would say that that's like necessary. It's pretty foundational in order to successfully productize your service.
Oh yeah, and productize is just a big word for like doing a good job. Like there's steps. There's some spreadsheet somewhere that says here's all the steps we go through. And here's how long it takes. Then there's a treasure chest of reusable templates so that you're setting expectations every time. You're talking about it the same way. You're delivering the same value. If you have a lack of documentation and things are going differently every time, then yeah, it's not productized. But it's a fluid word. You're never done. There's always more detail that you could give it, but the degree to which you can consistently deliver value on in a certain amount of time and manage costs. I mean, yeah, your service starts to look like a product on the books. It takes the same amount of money to make a Nike shoe every time. But yet services companies have zero clue about, exactly how much work it's going to take from client to client. But if all the clients look the same and go through the same process, it's far more controllable.
Yeah, I think that's so good. You touched on this a little bit, but I want to dive in further here. The unique challenges in pricing consulting services. Would you mind elaborating a little bit more on how digital agencies should determine the right price for their consulting services and adjust based on client feedback?
Yeah, content, websites, anything that people are buying is subject to competitive pricing, and people will say, "Oh, it's value based," but it's not true when you can be replaced. Like, I don't care that blog article made you $1 million. I can't charge you $1 million for a blog article because Timmy, the writer next door, is gonna do the same thing for $10. And if a client perceives that they're getting the same value, they will replace you. And the keyword is perceives. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. If they perceive that AI can create 30 million articles for them, and they're currently paying me $500 an article, I'm out. So strategic services have no rules, basically. I mean, I remember a guy coming into our agency, and I wanted to learn more about strategy, and he showed me this deck. It was like 200 slides or something. And it was a $1.5 million project. And I was looking at this slide deck going, this is absolute trash. It was trash. I was like 23 and I knew it was trash. It had like 10,000 recommendations. It's like none of this is actually going to happen. $1.5 million. And I realized that it is a complete game. It's not value based. It's perceived value based, which is completely fluid. So the reality is people undercharge. They undercharge because clients are saying yes. And so with consulting services, the price is never right. It's either too high or too low. And if you're getting a yes, it means you left money on the table. No is the start. No is the start of getting paid what you're worth. If you're not getting no's and then you lean in and go, well, like how are you thinking about it? Is it that there's budget elsewhere? Is it the fee structure? Is it the payment terms? Is it you don't see the value in it? Like I've gotten a no to a $20,000 project, and like they were ready to walk, and I was like, well, what does it need to look like for you? And they were like, well, honestly, we just don't have 20 grand right now. I mean, we could do 10 now and 10 in 30 days. And I'm like, hold, please. Let me check with my finance team. Yeah, I think we could do that. So, you know what I mean? And I was previously charging 15. So the reality is, if you're getting if you get a yes, double the price. If you get a no, get 4 more no's at that price point, and then split the difference. You're charging 10 today, charge 20 tomorrow. Because that conversation, once they say no to 20, that conversation may end up with, okay, well, here's what we can do. You've got a 3-step process. Easy math. It's early for me. You've got a 4-step process. It's $20,000. You were previously charging 15. They don't have $20,000. You know what we could do? We could do the first step in the process for $5,000. That is not a discount. That is favorable payment terms. That's allowing them to take object one and say, well, I can only pay for that now. A couple months later, I may pay for piece 2 and piece 3. So you have not sacrificed the integrity of your process. Everyone is still going A, B, C, D. You have also not given a discount, which completely eliminates all control and respect. But like my dad always said, don't make it difficult for people to work with you. So my favorite thing to do is get a no and say, well, there's clearly value here, and I know this is a focus for you. So what does it need to look like for you?
I love that. Yeah, and on the topic of value pricing, like you said, it's not value pricing; it's perceived value pricing, and perception can be wildly different. Depending on the buyer, even
just their personality.
Right.
Nothing to do with like how valuable it actually is. A lot of it is just personality.
Yes.
And so my favorite thing to do is get price out of the way as early as possible, because it gets so awkward the longer you go, because you've spent more and more time with people that you're afraid saying it costs $30,000. It's like, it's like embarrassing because now you've wasted all this time because they don't have 30 grand. So I like to just accidentally spit it out early in conversations, and you always see them, like, you just be naturally talking, they'll look down and they'll take a little note, they'll write it down because they want to know. And don't give me this, oh, it depends. If somebody asks you how much it costs, please spit out a number. Don't do this. Well, we have to strap you to a jet engine and fly you around the world 5 times before we know how much it's going to cost. Give them a range. Just be like, answer the question. Stop being so scared of the number.
Yeah, and specifically, this is also really applicable for advisory or some type of like consulting type of engagement, right? Is what we're talking about. We're not necessarily talking about like tactical work here. Although tactical,
well, tactical is wildly variable. That's the problem. What somebody actually needs to be successful is going to vary from client to client. But the idea that it costs $10,000 to figure out exactly what you need, and it's going to be 2 weeks, and we're going to do 3 calls, and I'm going to talk to these people, and that's the same way every time. So yeah, my best clients pay me $10,000 to create a plan. That's step 1. What more do you need to know?
So, Max, I know that your background is more marketing agency, and then also you work a lot with more of on the marketing side, but you also work with other digital agencies as well as a consultant. A lot of my audience is more software development agencies, so still in the agency space, but a little bit more technical, some unique challenges in that space. And something that I think I hear a lot of when we talk about value pricing, we just talk about just different types of engagements, is there's a large resistance to something that's fixed, to some type of price that's fixed, because of the nature of developing software. It's a very iterative thing. Most dev shops are going to go with some type of flexible arrangement. Now, given what you shared,
and it's slightly creative, right? Like I would imagine if I was developing software, the client's always going to be like, well, what if it magically disappeared? If somebody like turns their head and you're like, well, I guess, okay, maybe. And then now you're like, the budget's blown. Yeah. So there's probably wildly creative and subjective.
Yes, it flexes throughout the engagement and all that kind of stuff. But given the categories that you have established, tactical work versus strategic work, I'd say based on those definitions, even the development of the software itself is probably more in the tactical bucket. Yeah. What would be an example of like the strategic type of work that you might consult with a software development agency to try to bring to market?
I mean, this will be a really fun game. You name a service that's tactical, and I'll make it strategic. Okay, go.
So I am engaged to develop an application for pre-seed, or just got a Series A funding.
Great. Here's the strategic version of that. Yep. An application roadmap, roadmap, strategy, plan. Take anything tactical. You add one of those words at the beginning or the end, and it's magically strategic. Before you do anything, you have to create a plan. So if it's software, a product roadmap, right? And the process for creating a product roadmap is controllable, it's standardized. There's a conversation that happens. Then you draw something on a sheet of paper. You limit it to 4 iterations. The plan is always over a 6-month time period. You can control all those elements when the first thing you sell is a product roadmap. And shouldn't we create the product roadmap before we start building the thing? Isn't that like important? And by the way, this is on a spectrum, right? And Timmy's tweet is on the all the way tactical side. The exit plan for the business owner is all the way on the strategic side. So before the product roadmap came like some research maybe on what consumers want. So consumer research. Hey, before we create a product roadmap for you, have you guys done any consumer research?
Ooh, that's good.
Okay, well, maybe we should do that. And you know what? If that's not your thing, bring in a partner that does consumer research because you're going to get a piece of that pie.
Yeah.
Client's going to think you're awesome.
Yeah.
And that consumer research company is going to give you business in return because that's what people do when you land deals in their lap.
That's so good.
And those are those questions, right? Oh, so you're making a product. You're about to spend $1 million on this product. You must be pretty darn sure of what people want. You must be pretty darn sure of the business model you're going after. Your investors must have some pretty solid expectations. Why don't we do a workshop to align the product with the investors' expectations? We call it a financial alignment
roadmap strategy.
Fun with words. Yeah, roadmap. Roadmap's one of the, it's all plan, strategy, roadmap, plan. Yeah. It's all plan.
Yeah.
And so that's my message is sell the plan first, and everything that you're doing, like you do the plan first. You're just not charging for it.
Oh, that's so true. That's
like
so true.
Actually builds an application without creating a plan.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
and obviously some of the pushback, again, I'm hearing the voices in my head. They're like, yeah, but we can't know, like, we're not going to do this waterfall.
The voices are strong. Yeah. The voices are strong. They're
like, we're not doing waterfall
doesn't
here.
know what he's talking about.
Yeah,
Tony, get this guy out of here.
But I'd argue that, even with as much, we're not going to do waterfall when we're talking about, a project plan or a roadmap or whatever for the software. It's still possible to create a roadmap without it being a full-blown waterfall project roadmap. Like you can still have a roadmap.
I don't even know what waterfall is. That's a new one though. That's a new one for me. What does that mean?
Yeah, so waterfall is a methodology of project management, and it's oftentimes the bane of the existence of a software developer because they're like, "God, like we can't know
super
exactly
complex,
what the features
technical." Yeah. So your waterfall thing, I would say, is on the technical plan side, which is wildly variable. But a strategic plan is not.
It's higher level.
You have to standardize the level of complexity or detail, right? And so if you're creating a plan that a software developer is going to be looking at that plan and actually building something, that's going to be on the tactical side. That's going to be variable based on what you're building. But to figure out what you should be building, at a high level, that can be standardized.
Yeah. And to give more further distinctions, again, from conversations I've had with some of my people, even a design sprint or like a design plan is still probably a little bit more in the tactical realm. And what we're talking about here, what Max is talking about here, is more even a higher level up from even a design sprint for designing an application.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to be a designer to create a design sprint. You'd have to be a software developer to create a waterfall thingy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, here's a good test. If I don't know what the heck you're talking about, it's probably tactical.
Right.
Right. Because you know why? This is all about relationships with the leadership team. If they don't know what you're talking about, then it's not strategic. As soon as you start saying waterfall thing, they're just like, cool. You need to talk to my buddy Tony over here, who's going to be in charge of this technical project. When it starts making money, come talk to me about the money. So the strategic plan doesn't have ticky-tacky buttons anywhere. It's just like, how much money are we going to make? How are we going to make it? Who are we going to sell it to? That's a leadership conversation.
Yeah. So good. So Max, in our call previously, you had mentioned to me about selling consulting services, maybe even as a loss leader. Would you mind elaborating a little bit more on when is it appropriate to use consulting as a loss leader and how agencies can strategically implement the approach without devaluing the service?
Yeah, like here's two different experiences, but the answer is, look, the economy changes, your life is going to change. You got to be a human being. You got to feed your kids, right? So, on one hand, I'm working with an agency, and I go and I interview their client because they tried to pitch them a $20,000 strategy project. They were literally asking for it. They're like, "Yeah, we'd love to do more strategy work with you." That's why I was hired. So I interviewed them and I was like, well, they pitched you a $20,000 strategy project and you guys said no. And they were like, oh, well, we thought it couldn't possibly be valuable for $20,000. We thought it was going to be like at least 100 or 120. So we just went and worked with a consulting firm. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to buy a pair of shoes that cost 50 cents. So what it costs to different people is going to impact that perceived value. So if you price it too low, the perceived value is, well, this is really low. And even if they do buy it, you're probably not going to get the attention of the leadership team. They might show up once, but they're under no obligation to take your advice. Oh, well, we only paid, $8 for it. We could just toss it out. Who cares?
Yeah.
But if you pay $50,000 for somebody to tell you what to do, people are probably going to give it a shot. Now, on the other hand, so I walked around with that philosophy, for a while. On the other hand, there's some industries, like I was doing this for an IT company, and for some reason, IT functions like, really weird. It's like really very technical, people. So they're not a big fan of strategy work or whatever. So we realized that the accounts would double or triple if we could do this workshop with their leadership team. And so we went out, we did like a survey of all the biotech firms and we called up the leadership team. They're like, hey, we have like a lot of information about what biotech firms are buying and not buying. And they're like, oh, we would love that information. Great. Let's do a workshop. And I don't know, is like $5,000 okay? I don't want to make a big deal. I don't want to have to go through procurement. Oh yeah, $5,000. I could put that on my credit card. You do that workshop and all of a sudden that account doubles, triples. And so on one hand, you can use consulting as the revenue stream, and it is a revenue stream, right? But if your organization is set up for volume services and your plan is to grow your services, yeah, you want them to pay attention. You want a price point that pays attention. And generally an organization will have some number where an executive can buy from you with single signature authority. It's generally under $10,000. It's $12,000. You got to go through procurement. We got to call Bill and Susan and Terry, and everyone's got to get into a room and agree. Now, hey, I'd like to do a workshop with your leadership team to make sure we're aligned with, strategically what you people are doing. What do you say, like $7,500? Would that turn any heads? No, I could put that on my credit card today. So it's about your business model, and it's about what you want to achieve, and it's revenue or profitability, because the strategy work is going to be the most profitable thing you do. But if your business model is to grow volume and revenue and headcount, and that's what the board wants, then yeah, you can use it as a loss leader, because you know that if you can get in there and run some process that's been shown to double the amount of business people are doing with you, yeah, you might even do it for free, as long as you can creatively get executives to pay attention, which is difficult when you're not charging for it.
Yeah. And I suppose it's a real fine needle to thread there too, because like you said, like, you don't want it to be so cheap that they just can be like, yeah, it's basically $8. It's essentially worthless advice. But you also want it to be cheap enough where they can just put it on their credit card and not have to worry about procurement. Yeah.
And you can't be perceived as giving them a discount or looking weak. David, I think I'm like 99% sure this was David Baker, but in his book, he talks about, I think it's his recent book, it's either full price or free. No, never discount, never negotiate. It's either full price or it's free. I like that.
And you would stand by that. You think that's a good rule of thumb for now. Yeah.
It's either full price or it's free.
You don't run promos. You're not just like, hey, we're giving $1,000 off on this engagement.
Oh God! I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine like a highly paid consultant on LinkedIn sending out coupons, running a promo. Hey, for the month of July, my hands-on service is 50% off. It's like, what?
Just go on a Groupon, get yourself a nice discount for Max Traylor.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a reality thing that's happening out there.
Not so much. It's certainly not for consulting, not for anything that's advisory related.
Because then it's like, wait, if you can do it for 50% off, now you're just opening the doors to like, hey, I know you'll do it for 50% off. So you're never going to get full price again.
Yeah, that's really good. It's true. Well, in that last little blurb, you had mentioned something about it really depends on what you want out of your agency, and when you're thinking about like whether or not to do loss leader, all this kind of stuff. But something that I've appreciated about some of the other, as you had other speaking engagements, something that you've talked about is like building a business around your personal life, and not letting this kind of suck the life out of you. What would be some practical steps that agency owners can take to ensure their business supports their personal goals and their well-being?
Well, plan your personal life. That's the thing that, look, you got these successful business owners, and if you're successful in business, it's because you know how to plan and you hold yourself accountable and you get it done. But they don't plan their personal life first. They plan their business and they sacrifice their personal life if they have any bit of energy left. So my policy is to plan my personal life first. That means when I sit down to do an annual plan, what do I want out of my personal life? Well, I want to spend 30 days playing golf every single day. 2 years ago, we took the third month off all year. So we worked for 3 months, then took a month off. Worked for 3 months, took a month off. And then we thought about the business model and what we needed to do to make that happen. That's when we started doing the 3-month quarterly engagements. So we'd have a 3-month engagement with 3 clients. We'd take a month off and we'd come back. So, you plan your personal life first, and then you think about the business model to support that. So yeah, just, you got to sit down and like create a plan for your personal life. And none of this, and people are generally screwed because the plan for their personal life amounts to however many weekends you get. Right. So someone sometime came along and said, we're going to work 5 days a week, 10 hours a day or whatever. And if you don't, you're going to be shunned because you're lazy and whatever. The whole hustle culture thing. And so like that just puts barriers that brings you back to normal life sacrifice for business. Figure out what you want to do. You want to spend 4 days with your kids every week and work 3 days? Great. We can create a business model around that. But nobody does that because they're indoctrinated in, the corporate world of sacrifice, which most of them had to do a lifetime of to develop the skills to go on their own as a consultant or run their company. For a business owner, if you've got employees, and you're not a solo consultant and you've got responsibilities, and, it comes down to productizing. It comes down to removing yourself from the business and, stopping this whole, like, I'm the only one that can do sales, or I'm the only one that can do service. Yeah. It's difficult. It's probably a new muscle for you to like write down what you're actually doing and find somebody capable of doing it on your behalf, but it has to be done. So go take an hour and plan your personal life over the next 3 months.
And plan it, like you said, plan it first. And then after you've planned your personal life, then you layer on what you want from the business. And I imagine that's probably a lot more doable for somebody who is the sole owner of the business. And then when you start dealing with partners, it could probably be like, there might be like a little bit of a rub there, because maybe one partner has a different expectation for what the personal life looks like versus the other
relationships are difficult. What's new? Like, and forget about like having like 2 or 3 partners. I'm pretty sure that's why it's illegal in every state, but Utah. It's just people would go crazy. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's difficult if you've got partners. You actually need to align culturally. What are our values as a partnership? That's why my partnership works. Because when she's like, yeah, I'm going to go spend a month in Mexico and turn my phone off, I'm like, that is freaking awesome. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go plan something too. You've inspired me. And I'll go like, well, what are we going to do? It's like, great, let's plan a business model around you taking off, because like that's what life is about. And I'd only be able to work with somebody that shared that, value.
Yep. Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, Max, this has been incredibly insightful. We talked a lot about productizing services. We talked about vendorification. There's been a lot. I feel like I'm going to look back on our episode, and maybe I'll have to write a book or something. I mean, unless somebody else has already written a book about this stuff.
I got a few, and I'm working on one more. I got the all on my LinkedIn profile. I got the black book, the agency survival guide. I got the yellow book, the consultant survival guide, and I'm working on a new edition of agency survival guide, Life After Inbound.
Ooh.
Because I don't know if you've noticed, but like nobody trusts content anymore because of AI.
Ooh, yeah.
Unless it's content like this, where you can tell that like I'm an actual human being. You're an actual human being. Like this is the I think like the last frontier of content.
Unless, Max, this is just a very compelling AI video of both of our personas. Like,
right, it's just a simulation.
It's all a simulation. We don't actually exist.
Right. Enjoy it.
Yes, but Life After Inbound, is that due to release sometime this year, or when are you gonna launch it?
Oh, probably not. No, I got a lot of interviews. I have so much fun writing the book because I don't actually write the book. I just talk to people that are smart, and they essentially write it for me. I'm more of like an editor,
editor of the stories,
and I draw opinionated pictures, like little drawings.
Oh, you actually draw? You're the one drawing them.
But there's a lot of that. It's easier to get to the 100-page minimum that's required by Amazon if you have like drawings and blank pages where notes go.
Gaming the system, right?
Well, yeah, it's like in high school you had to do the period trick where you double space after the period because the professor's like, it has to be 5 pages.
It's technically 5 pages.
Yeah. Well, what font are we working with?
So I guess maybe on the topic of the book, is there anything? Are you looking for conversations to be had, contributors to that?
I'd love to talk to people that are actually changing their services. Like what works in marketing. If you're holding on to the same like formula or narrative that you've been doing for the last 10 years, we probably got nothing to talk about. But if you have a habit of looking at what's working in the marketplace and then changing like your approach to helping clients, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And the main thing I'm seeing is I think we're finally at the end of this whole create content and they will come narrative where, all these fresh college grads were employed in these content mills, in these copy shops. I always accidentally say coffee shops. I mean to say copy shops. And then, now AI is finally driven the price of content to zero. Again, it doesn't matter if the content is going to work or is good or not. Everybody is arguing about that. And I'm like, that is irrelevant. There is enough people that think it's going to work. And so you're out and the price goes to zero. Because who has much bigger voices than service companies? Software companies.
That's true.
Yeah. So
the tech overlords.
They're dominating the narrative.
Yeah.
It's not as good. It's like, sorry. We have to try it.
Well, we feel differently about it. So I guess then the ask then for people who are listening to this podcast is, if you are currently exploring new ways of doing marketing, maybe have a conversation with Max.
Yeah, I might want to put your face in my book.
Would this face be you're going to draw their face, or?
I haven't decided. I think it depends on the face.
Okay.
I've got sort of a limited skill set.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I would pay just to see those sketches that you would draw in your book if you did that.
That's a new idea. That might be.
That's how you monetize. No?
That could be fun.
It could be good. Well, Max, as always, I appreciate our conversations. It's always so insightful, and I'm sure our listeners have gotten a lot out of this. If they wanted to follow along with what you're up to, if they wanted to connect with you,
LinkedIn. Max Traylor. The purple sort of gets faded out, but Traylor, very easy to find on LinkedIn. And yeah, I have strong opinions. I generally mean what I say, but I can be sarcastic. So like, give me a break.
Yeah, right. And you also do a lot of really great podcasts, like short form video content with different agency owners as well. And you post that pretty regularly. My podcast, Beers with Max, been doing that for 9 years. Yeah, I mean the best way to get to people is 1 and 2 minute snippets from my full interviews. So I'm pretty convinced nobody watches my full interviews because whatever. But yeah, there's some opinionated rants, and I try to post on LinkedIn pretty regularly. So if anybody's interested, go follow Max on LinkedIn. Max, is there another good way for people to connect with you, or is it just through LinkedIn? Is that the best way?
No, it's just LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Cool. Awesome.
My website's never as good as LinkedIn.
Fair enough.
I have to like pay someone to push buttons on my website. LinkedIn, I can just go in and I can, click edit and do all the things. It's update actually, people on my.
It's actually Max Traylor behind the scenes in LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's actually me. Like I and if I reach out and say like, how did you find me? That's actually me writing that. It's crazy.
That's good.
Gotta build relationships.
So wild. Well, Max, again, I really thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. And yeah, I'm looking forward. I feel like we have so much more to talk about. We'll have to have you back on for another episode.
Always. If you see me spitting some topics that were not covered on the LinkedIns, you let me know.
I will indeed. And thank you to our listeners. If you found value out of our podcast today, please share it with your friends and subscribe for future episodes. Also, don't forget to leave us a review because it helps other people find us and hear inspiring stories like the one we heard today. If you are the founder of a software development agency, or you know somebody who is, and you'd like to share something exciting that you're up to with our audience, drop me a line at tony@equip.com. That's ACCQUIP.com.